switch my thing back to me. Screen 3, there we go. Okay. So ended on the quiz. Let me just go back to my presentation. And there we go. Hi. Welcome back, everybody. So question here in the break, can we use Google Analytics for a Facebook page, an Instagram page? Oh, I wish we could. No. Okay. Unfortunately, everyone, each of the platforms finds that their analytics is proprietary. Okay. It's something that they use in order to make sure you stick with the platform and don't think about going elsewhere. So you can use tools. So for example, what's one called? Owlmetrics or something for Instagram. It's very good. Facebook, there are several, Sprout Social and Hootsuite and a whole bunch of others, like just social media analytics tools. Now, before, I think maybe like 5 or 6 years ago, it was pretty important which tool you got. Nowadays, most of them operate pretty much at the same level. I think pretty much, I don't know. I've seen a few of them and they look very similar to me. But yes, so they operate differently. So your web analytics and your social media analytics will typically not be very well integrated, unfortunately. And so it's something that you still will need the skill of an analyst to review. And I think there's probably something worth thinking about there, because if you're doing your page analytics and you're trying to build up your page and your audience and your likes and your comments and shares, and you might want somebody to have a little look and see, is this having a material effect on our online business? Now, it's not the only reason that you have Instagram and Facebook. I realize Instagram and Facebook are now required. Maybe you even need also an additional one, a Pinterest, a Twitter, a LinkedIn, a TikTok. And these are all just part of being in marketing now, of course, because people expect you to be there. And if you're not there, it's a little bit weird. But it could be interesting to see whether or not there is any correlation. As you do better on social media, are you doing better? Is your business doing better? And I suspect that, I know for the fact, a lot of people know that they don't. And brands that I've worked with have actually dropped channels. Twitter being the main one. Too hard to manage. Too hard to manage the crowds. And they would see that they would get lots of engagement on Twitter, and absolutely no benefit to the business. So, yeah. So they've actually, a couple businesses have closed up their Twitter feeds. And I think a couple of famously ended their Facebook relationships as well. Instagram, though, as far as I know, everyone's on Instagram because it's people are not typically very difficult to manage on there. You don't really have so many nasty comments on the platform for some reason, and so it's a little bit easier. So people have kept that up, but definitely others are wondering whether or not they're any good. But yes, back to your original question. Your Facebook page and your Instagram page have to be sort of managed separately using a social media analytics tool, I'm afraid. But you'll see Google Analytics and what it does. You will definitely see it. All right, let us move on. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk a bit about some analytics topics now. And the thing is, one thing that I've always found kind of lacking in the analytics training, some of the stuff that I've done even, is not actually asking the questions of what is it, what are all these words mean? What is the fundamental what are the meaning of all the things, all the terms that are used? And so I'm just going to go through some definitions. I don't even think I quiz you on these, but I just want to make sure that there's absolutely no doubt in anyone's mind what it is we're talking about when we talk about analytics. Okay. What are we talking about when we talk about analytics? So first of all, I think there's some fundamentals of statistics and statistical analysis. And actually, when you learn a little bit about statistics, as we will do now, it kind of opens up some areas, and you start to maybe see things in a different way. And you start to see, maybe all those numbers that I'm reporting all the time, or that somebody else is reporting, are not quite what they seem to be. They're not quite as exact as they may claim to be. All right. So first of all, what is a statistic? Just down to the basics. And I think a lot of times people sort of say this word. Well, I've got a statistic for you. Well, statistics says, well, we have a statistic over here. And without really realizing what exactly it means when you say a statistic, a statistic. And so I looked at several definitions just to make sure it's as simple as it can be without being any simpler. And what I found is that really a statistic is a fact. It is a single fact. So when somebody has a statistic, it should be a fact, but it should be not one that comes from the top of somebody's head. A fact that they've made up. Okay, they sort of thought, okay, I've got a fact for you. I think a blue button is better than a red button. No, that's not a statistic. That is just an opinion. That's an opinion, sometimes often disguised as a fact. But what we want is a fact that is made up of sort of a result. And it's all boiled down from a data study. So the data and analytics process we talked about before, the end result should be a statistic or a couple of statistics, because really our monkey brains can't really handle a whole lot more than that. We really can't take in, a whole load of data and manage it. What we have to be told is we did the analysis and the data suggests that the red button is better than the blue button. Okay. That is what we have to work with. Or maybe you could even say the red button is 10% better than the blue button. That's a nice statistic. Makes it very easy. Everyone has probably because we have 10 fingers, we go, 10% better would be having 11 fingers. We sort of process that data very easily. What we don't do very well with is, well, the red button got 3% more clicks, but the blue button actually got 5% more conversions. But if you like we don't really process that sort of information very well. And so definitely, boiling things down to a single number, a statistic, a fact is a really good way to do analytics. Question, get the slides earlier, makes the learning smoother, paper mentally. What do you think? We can talk to Marianne. I'll talk to her in the break and see if we can get those to you. Yeah, no, I have no problem with it. I don't think there's anything that I'm giving away in the slides, but yeah, sure, it can help. Absolutely. Yeah, let me just work on that. Okay, so statistic is a fact. What is statistics? What is statistics? What are we doing when we're doing statistics? Well, we are collecting, organizing, analyzing, interpreting, processing, presenting. We're doing all sorts of things with data, okay? And so, statistics is the study of how to do this better. It's the study of how to create a statistic. All the things that we do when we're working with data. And I think this is important to know because oftentimes, people don't really, they don't really have a handle on what analytics is, which is understanding the past, preparing the future, predicting the future. They don't know, how do we understand the past? Well, we understand the past typically by using statistics. Now, you can also use like probability studies and stuff like that, but that's not so common. Really, the main thing that we're going to use are statistical methods, and we'll talk about what some of those are. But statistics is just the analytics is basically statistics. Okay, you're analyzing data using statistical methods in order to boil down a whole load of data, which we can't do anything with. We can't do anything with. We cannot use data. Data is too big for our heads. So we use statistics to boil it all down and to get into a statistic. And we present that statistic and we say, hi, the red button outperforms the blue button by 10%. Then we have taken so much data, so much information, gotten rid of all the stuff that nobody cares about, and given people exactly what they need to know in order to make a decision. So that is what we're doing. And we could throw in there, our data suggests that if we change, from the blue button to the red button in the future, it will outperform by 10%. And I would say that's even better because people like to have people who tell them the future and go, especially when it's data driven or using data analysis. Okay. And then finally, what is statistical analysis? How do we do the analysis portion of it? Well, we've already talked about it a bit, where we take the data, we review it, we clean it up, we do the exploring, we come up with some ideas, we end up with some sort of conclusion, and then we present that using our sort of statistical method of making sure if it's a formal report, we have an informal report. If it's just a statistic, well, maybe we just email it. But it's what we do. It's the process of doing statistics. Okay. Data. What is data? What is data? Well, we saw data before, and it's usually a load of rows, where every row has a value in each column, right? But what it really is a series of observations of the world. We've taken some snapshot of something, and we've recording one by one each of them methodically. And whether that's every single ad impression, every single visit to the website, every single conversion, every single purchase, every shopping cart, every, I don't know, maybe you could even say every, I don't know, every person who's coming to the store, coming to the site. You could somehow record some sort of list of every single thing that you have. And it's the complete set is the data that you're working with. Now, it could be structured, which is where what I'm talking about there, where every single row is every single column, or it can also be unstructured. And so some of the stuff that you might get in social media, for example, when you have a social media monitoring tool that is monitoring all of the comments. Those typically, well, I mean, they will fall into a comments column, but typically they won't be structured into a particular type of comment. You will have to figure that out yourself. And so it can take a bit of work if you are, as soon as you enter in something where you are taking in, comments or anything like that. So structured data is much, much, much easier to work with. Although, you can work with unstructured data like comments if, say, you pull out topics and you say, well, this person talked about our service delivery, or this person talked about our product quality, or whatever. And you can turn your unstructured data into structured data so that you can work with it. Because it's not really possible to do statistical analysis on unstructured data. And then, yes, clean or raw. Mentioned that before, where if you get nice clean data, very easy to work with, very easy to explore. If it's raw data, it will take a lot of work to get through. Okay, now important here is about variables. Okay, and yeah, I think you're right, Maureen. I think if I share these slides, maybe it'll be easier for you to review, and so it'll probably be a good idea. Let me sort that out at the break, at lunch. We'll do it at lunch, so you have these to sort of keep in mind, because this is important to understand the different types of variables, and it's something as you get more used to data analytics kind of comes a bit more naturally, but initially it can be a little bit confusing. So first of all, we have what are called the categorical variables. And these are variables that are typically, I would say, categories are typically words, okay? And there's no particular order to them. So it could be names of countries. It could be gender, male, female. It could be product, the name of a product. It could be, anything that is in a category where there's no order. A lot of personal features are categories: hair color, eye color. There's no way of sort of categorizing one better than the other. It's just what it is. And then you have ordinals, okay? And ordinals are kind of like categories in that there are a limited amount of them, but they come in some sort of order, okay? And so, whereas I'd say at the bottom there, age, which we'll get to in a minute, is numerical, and we can work with age a bit. Age ranges most of the time how you get the data, and you can't do a lot with age range. You can put it in order, and you can sort of show, the youngest age range to the oldest age range, but you can't do any real analysis on it. Income. A lot of times people will just say, I have, well, I mean, sometimes they put in numbers there, but it's usually along the lines of high, medium, and low. And you can't really do a whole lot with that either. And the other one, oh, the one that's really, that I don't know if anyone ever works with surveys, you get Likert scales, where it goes from disagree strongly to agree strongly on a number of items. Now, the trouble with ordinals and why they're so difficult to work with is because they're not evenly spaced. Okay. So you can't sort of say that, on a Likert scale, if you say that, strongly disagree to neutral to agree to strongly agree, that there's sort of an equal space between each of those and then come up with some sort of average value. It doesn't work like that, because if one person strongly agrees, another person strongly disagrees, the middle isn't neutral, right? The middle isn't neutral. I would say the middle is much more that the person who strongly you should probably spend more time worrying about the strongly disagree than the strongly agree. Because everyone can go, yeah, I strongly agree. Easy. But it takes a lot to strongly disagree with something. And so it tends to be, Likert scales tend to be bad, used poorly in analysis in order to come up with, sort of a good measurement of a result. So do be careful. If you identify something as an ordinal, just put a little caution sign on it, because a lot of times people will convert those into numbers and then try to do averages. And really, it doesn't really work like that. It doesn't work well like that anyway. It works well for the statistical analysis, because you have everything in a nice little number, but the results you get typically don't follow reality, because reality is much more complicated than that. Now, numerical data is something we can work with. Okay, age. You can say that one person is older than another. You can say somebody's twice as old. You can say the average age of people in the room is. And I'll talk about that in a minute. Then, of course, there's other things that we're going to talk about in marketing: page views. How many pages somebody viewed of a website, or how many page views in total you had in a day, or your total page views per month. This was a common statistic used to rank websites. All of these things are possible because it's a continuous number. There's no limit. You can have 0 page views, or you can have, I don't know, up to some sort of uncountable amount. I can't imagine. Imagine how many page views Amazon has. No idea, right? Billions? I don't know. Not even sure. And even though you could argue that it's a category or an ordinal, sorry, because it's sort of 1 or 2 or 3, it's treated as a as a numerical because of the way that you can manipulate it. You can use a number. Amount purchased is even more granular, right? Because we have not only the in Singapore anyway, the dollars, but we also have the cents. You can break it into fractions as well. And so it's even kind of more continuous than that. And so, yeah, definitely can add those. And, $20 is more than twice as much. So 20 ringgit is twice as much as 10 ringgit, of course, right? We know these things. And so we can work with these numbers very well. But what we always have to keep an eye out is that when we're doing analysis, that we're using numerical data as much as possible. Of course, it always comes down to what needs to be done. All right, we average Likert scale for one thing, or we say that, oh yeah, people tended to be higher income or whatever. Maybe we can sort of put our thumb on the scale a little bit, but just be very wary of how you apply these things to your analysis. Okay, and then what I would say, there are 8 types of statistics. There is, first of all, what most people do, which is descriptive statistics. And this is where we look at the past and we try to describe it, try to boil it all down into a very simple number that anyone can understand. That's the whole point of statistics, the whole point of analytics. Make it simple so that we can say one number that everyone understands. It's impossible for somebody not to understand it. And then if we get it down to that, then people will pay attention to what we do. Okay. Otherwise, they will look at our charts and graphs and whatever and go, yeah, that's really interesting. And they will never think of it. And we will not have succeeded in the ultimate goal, which is not just predicting the future, but actually trying, to convince somebody of our prediction of the future. Okay. So descriptive statistics is something that we have to do definitely for ourselves, and then also for reporting purposes. And in descriptive statistics, we have a summary variable. Okay, so whatever we're going to do, it comes down to one particular number. Now, this is it. This is pretty much the list of what you're going to be able to use when you describe things. And it's not the full list of what is available, but it's a full list of what anyone who's a normal human understands. And this is something that I think analysts get a little bit carried away with, is that they assume everyone is as interested in analytics as they are. But they aren't. They aren't. They want to know how many. They want to count. They want a total. What was the sum total of what we had? Okay. Maybe a comparative sum total at most. Mean. I'll get to mean in a minute, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about the other two, which are median and mode. And a lot of times when people are looking for the middle of something, they don't necessarily want the mean. And again, I'll talk about mean in a minute. What they really want is, first of all, they may want the median, which is the middle value of a number series. Okay, so if you have, say, 1, 3, 5, 7, 10, 5 is the median. Okay, 1, 2, it's even, yeah, no, it's not the mean, it's the median, it's the middle value. What is the middle value? What is the value where it's even on the left and the right? Excuse me, even number of numbers on the left and the right. Okay, or alternatively, they may want the mode, and they want the most popular value. Okay, so it's not even really the middle value, it's the value that is most popular. And so, for example, if you are going to do survey analysis and you are going to review things, strongly disagree to strongly agree, and you're going to try to present the data, one way of doing it is, well, you could use the median, or you could also use the mode. What was the most popular answer? What was the most popular answer? Okay. Um, then we have a range, and I think we probably understand that. You know, we had the total range of people who visited our site were age 16 to 65. The value, the purchase amount was somewhere between $2 and $224. You know, these sorts of things people generally understand fairly well. And it gives everyone a good idea of the data set that you're talking about. So it can be useful. But what's more useful, and I think I hold back a little bit on recommending it too much, but is to talk about the variance, or standard deviation is another term, where you can sort of say, here is, say, the middle value, which is the mean, which I'll talk about in a minute, or and plus or minus, 2 or 3 or 4. You can start to sort of say a little bit about how sure you are of the middle value. And I think people now sort of understand that. I think that's probably okay. It's just for you to be able to calculate that, which you should be able to do. And we'll definitely talk about that tomorrow, how you would calculate, some of the error value of your end result, and so that you can report it accurately. And I would say that is absolutely as far as you could go. Obviously, there are other things that you can do. You can do, say, I don't know, dot plot, interquartile range. There's all sorts of other ways of reporting statistics, but often I find that if you go beyond count, sum, and mean, you're starting to head into dangerous waters where your people are just not going to understand what you're talking about, and they're going to ignore you, or they're just not going to take it in things. So I would say, when you're going to report a number, try to keep it on the simpler side of things here. Now, why do I reserve mean? I reserve mean. What do I mean by mean? It's a bit of a mean word. And mean is what we commonly think of as the average, but any statistician would be appalled by saying that, because what kind of average? An arithmetic average? A geometric average? So when we're talking about this middle value, we are talking about the mean. And it is, okay, so it's the central value of a series of numbers. Okay, and just to make it absolutely clear for anyone who's not feeling very mathematical today, you get a mean by calculating the sum and then dividing by the count. Okay? So mean of a 6-sided dice is 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6 divided by 6, and you get the mean value of 3.5. Now, what is mean? Why is it any use whatsoever? Well, okay, it's also known as the expected value of a series. And it's what's quite interesting is that um, for a dice roll, you roll the dice, the expected value is actually 3.5. However, we all know that unless some bizarre miracle happened and it landed somewhere in between 4 and 3, we would never actually say the dice rolled 3.5. However, as you roll the dice more and more and more and more, and take the average of the result of those rolls, it will tend to 3.5. Now, when I do a more detailed analytics course, we actually run the simulation ourselves. And what I found is it takes about a million to 10 million rolls in order to get 3.5 almost every time. So it does take a lot of rolls to make sure that you're actually going to hit the mean. But suffice it to say, you could say that over time, it will tend towards mean. You may roll 3 6s, but somewhere down the line, you will roll 3 1s. It's just something that, the value will eventually, given enough time, tend towards the mean. So the mean is an important value of any set of numbers. And why is that? Well, the mean is important because it helps us understand the past and predict the future. It is probably the number one value that is useful for these two things. Not only does it help you understand the past, but it helps you communicate what you think is likely to happen in the future. Okay. I've looked at the data. Oh, what did you see? Well, I've calculated that on average. So what do you think is going to happen in the future? Well, I think we will probably hit on average in the future. And this is what I mean. I think I talked about it earlier about how when you want to find a value of a number series and you want to say predict something 3 months out, if you calculate the 3 months before and whatever it is, let's say purchase amount per day, and you take 3 months and you sum it all up and you divide it by how many days there were, say 90 days or whatever, then that will give you a nice average. Let's say it's $100 a day. Then going forward, you would say that is what we can expect every day. That's how important the mean is. And the mean is probably been used for 2,500 years as a way of predicting the future. And it's funny how we've not gotten a lot better than that. We haven't improved a whole lot from there. But it is something very easy to do. People very much understand it. And so it should be used quite liberally. And so, yeah, so here we go. What questions to answer? How many page views do we get from each visitor? So how many views do people do when they come to our site on average? Well, you get the mean. And then you say, every single person who comes to our site, we can expect this. Of course, some people will view less, some people will view more, but on average, it should be about that. And it's very useful for sort of grounding people's expectations. Okay. Yeah, and how many purchases should we expect per visit? Okay, so per visit, how many purchases should we expect? That's otherwise known as what's called the conversion rate, because it is the percentage of people who come to your site and actually do what you want them to do. Very, very useful number. And for those of you who maybe aren't so familiar with it, it's a rock solid statistic. It is something that is incredibly hard to move, which is both good and bad. Meaning that if your conversion rate, let's just say, is 1%, which is a reasonable conversion rate these days. Somebody comes to your site, sees what they like, puts it in their cart and actually ends up buying it. 1%, not too bad. 2% maybe. And it's funny, day in, day out, different people, different motivations, different channels, different devices, different things they buy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But you end up with this bunk conversion rate that is 1 or 2% every single day. And there is kind of like a mathematical reason for this. But we don't have to go into that. Instead, what you just think of it as an analyst as, if you can get a good mean and it's holds steady, it means you have a very strong asset in your company, right? Your company can deliver customers at around 1 to 2% per visitor. And so, if you can be sure of that number, then what you can do is in future, you can just try to drive more traffic to get more business. Another thing that's rock solid is what order value should we expect from each purchaser. So it's called the AOV, the average order value. I would like to call it the mean order value, but no, they would, people in e-commerce don't allow that. So the average order value is how much you expect people to buy every day. And again, with enough customers, now each customer will buy something different, right? Maybe one person just buys a comb, and another person buys I don't know, something very, very large. And so then, you have huge differences. However, on average, every day you will look at the average order value. And again, it's a very, very consistent number. And it's almost shocking. It's almost shocking. There will be some variability. There will be some variability. So definitely see, like we saw before, there was variability on web page views when it was a weekend or a weekday. Okay. But in general, these numbers hold up. The mean holds very strong. The mean is very strong. And it's so strong that even Google uses it. Here is a little flash forward to our using Google Analytics later. And in here we see a table of, but I'll describe how this all works later. But anyway, we have a country, okay? All the different countries, the people who have visited our website, and we see pages per session. It says, okay, so session is a visit, pages is how many pages they viewed, and here we have it's the average number, the mean number of pages viewed per visit, and this number, I believe, is like every day that the site goes. It's pretty much rock solid. However, there are variations. And this is where analytics gets interesting. I know. It's already interesting. However, it even gets more interesting because we see that there are variations. Okay, we see that there are variations. People in America viewed 5.68. People in India viewed 2.8. They half the number of pages, and every day it's the same. And so what this information, this mean, gives you is it gives you a behavioral insight. It lets you peer into the minds of the consumers in different locations. People in America like to view a lot of pages. People in India don't. And weirdly, people in the UK are like people in India, whereas Canada, unsurprisingly, I guess a bit, kind of like Americans, view a little bit more like America. And so, you go, wow, how is that possible? How is that possible? How could somebody in each country, what do they like telepathically speaking to each other? Only view 2 or 3 pages when you come to the website. In the United Kingdom, telepathically in America, only view 5 or 6 pages. No, but it's just you see something, you learn something about the character of the consumer. And you go, well, Americans like to view a lot. So maybe we'd go to the site, we go, well, Americans are viewing a lot of pages. Let's make sure that, the pages are, information rich. Whereas with the India and UK go, ooh, they're not viewing many pages. I don't know, maybe we need to put more activities on it so it gets them to view more. And we've measured that over time. This sort of insights can show you things about your consumers. And of course, it's not just countries and it's not just pages, right? There's every metric that we'll talk about here across the top. There's every way of dividing up our audience there on the left. And then we will learn about how to, and using analytics, we will learn about how to better serve our customers and ultimately make more money. Okay, so that is descriptive statistics. And I don't want to go on about it too much. I think most people generally probably have a pretty good idea since you guys are all Excel experts anyway. But you're able to count things, yeah, hopefully. Hopefully you're able to sum things, if not in your head, at least with the Excel. And calculate the mean. Now you know that. If you know those 3 things, I think you're probably pretty good. A lot of the other stuff, like talking about variance and all that kind of stuff, it gets a bit fancy, and you can just about get away with it, but I think you may lose it. You may lose people. So count, sum, and mean, and you are good. All right. Now, the other part of statistics that you may have heard a little bit more about is called inferential statistics. Or maybe you haven't, but you will understand it in a minute. And this is the process of understanding a population. understanding everybody, everybody, okay, by using just a small sample, which is representative, okay? So you're able, this is the study of mathematics. Believe it or not, this study of mathematics, this way of analyzing data is only about 100 years old. It's not really something that goes back to antiquity. It's something that's really developed by Fisher in sort of the last century. And it's really, I want to say, only been mass adopted since maybe the 1960s, 1970s. I don't know. Anyway, you think that it's been around forever, but it's not. It's not. And what this is we look at a population here. We take a sample, a small amount. Oops, I gotta go to my, I'm poking at the wrong one here. 1 second. There we go. So there's the population, is the big one. There we have the small one. And we analyze the small one very, very carefully. And we make an inference about everyone, about the whole one from the small one. Okay. And the main example of this that you are all familiar with is polling. So when they're, say we're before an election, we may want to know who is likely to win. They're not going to talk to every single person in the country. That would actually be called a census, by the way. That's what a census is when you talk or try to talk to every single person in the country. No, pollsters, they don't make it, they don't have enough money to do that. They're real cheapos, real cheapos. And what they will do is they will try and determine a representative sample beforehand. So, one old, one young, one from this part, one from that part, one from whatever. And then they'll smile and dial and they'll try and get people's opinions on various topics. And then they take all that data back and they go, okay, well, here we have somebody from the north, somebody from the south. There's a man, there's a woman, there's a young, there's an old, there's a this, there's a that. Okay, we have enough of each of them. All right, what did they all say? And then they take that information and they say, this is what Malaysia thinks about putting milk in your tea or whatever it is they're pulling up. And they'll make an inference. And then they'll say, this is true for everybody. This is true for everybody. Now, of course, there's a bit of a problem with that, right? A bit of a problem with that because it's not true. It's not true. It's only true for these people. 100% true, right? 100% true for these people. But they never report it like that. They don't go, we talked to 100 people. This is what they said. And, it could be true, could be not true. I don't know. No, they say, we talked to 100 people and, now we've resolved that Malaysians, prefer 3 to 4 to put milk in their tea or 3 to 2 to put milk in their tea. And what they should be doing all the time is saying, hi, we talked to a few people. We asked them if they like milk in their tea. 3 people said yes, 2 people said no. And we think that that's true, plus or minus, whatever, 1 or something. Maybe we would do even more like this. It would be like 60 people said yes, 50 people said no, and we think that as a representation of the population, plus or minus 1. So it could have been 59 said yes or 61 said yes. We don't know. We're not really sure. There's a little bit of uncertainty. And this is really what needs to be done with statistics more that isn't done. And we saw a great example of this, of where this caused a problem. And this was in the 2016 American election, where we had Donald Trump, polling behind all the time, Hillary Clinton polling ahead all the time, and she ended up losing. However, when we actually went and looked at the data, we saw that actually what they were doing is reporting a lot of the times Hillary was, like there was a margin of error, right? Because they were polling. They didn't ask everyone in the country or everyone in the city or everyone in the state whether they're going to vote for Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump. They asked a small group. And they would tend to report Hillary Clinton high and tend to report Donald Trump low because that's what they thought people wanted to know. And in the end, everyone was shocked, including me. I was incredibly shocked because all the polls had said she was pulling ahead all the time. However, when we went back and looked at the data, we saw that there was actually a lot of uncertainty that had not been accounted for. And this is something that was mentioned earlier about adding uncertainty to models. This is one way where you say, hey, this I think is true. I think the red button will perform better than the blue button in the future. I think it'll make us $10,000 or 10,000 ringgit, more money, whatever, per day But my data analysis that I've given you tells me that that's plus or minus 2,000. Okay, so it could be 8,000, could be 12,000, but I'm putting in the middle 10,000. However, it could be any of those values, and this is how uncertain, we have to be about our statistical analysis. And the reason is, so we don't do polls. I don't think most marketers, maybe some do surveys, whatever, occasionally. We don't typically do polls. Okay. What we typically do is we typically look at data, right? We look at data that's happened. However, what we don't realize, we're a little bit naive about, is when we're looking at data, we're actually doing the same thing as pollsters. Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to predict the future, which means we're trying to comment about all of the past and future data when we comment, okay? Which is like the whole population of Malaysia, by just looking at a small sample of all of the past and future data, which is just the past data. And we're trying to make an inference. We're trying to say, hey, we looked at this past data, we're predicting the future, we're trying to say that this is going to happen. But we often just presume that it's true, that the red button outperformed the blue button by 10%. And so that's obviously the case. But it's not, because we've only got a very small sample of data, which is the data that we have, right? We don't have the data in the future unless you're, I don't know, have skills beyond what normal humans do, in which case you probably don't need much analytics anyway. And we try to say about the future, we try to say, hey, this button outperformed this in the past, and we presume it's going to behave the same in the future. But what we always have to do is be less certain. We'll talk about how to be a bit less, how we measure our less certainty. We'll talk about that later. Okay, so we make an inference. Now, the other inference we make, and we should make, is we can look at a visualization. Now, this is something magical about humans. Is that when we look at data, we're absolutely useless. Okay, we can look at. We can't read. A computer can read data and do everything it wants with it. We can't. We look at a load of numbers. And I'd say after the fourth or fifth number, we're out of it. We can't make any heads or tails of it. We just can't hold that many numerical objects in our mind. I think the most, what they say is 5 or 6 is the most. What was it? What did they say? Somebody said, like, you can remember 5 things plus or minus 3. I'm like, oh, that's useful. So you can either remember 8 things or 2 things. But anyway, we can't hold a lot of data in our heads, and we can't really make a lot of sense of it if we're just looking at numbers. However, we look at something like this, and we are looking at potentially, I don't know, what is it, from September to June, hundreds of numbers there, hundreds. And while we can't comment on each individual number, we can very easily see, even without that black line there, that things are just going up, right? So our sense of visual appreciation of numbers is far greater than our numerical appreciation of numbers, okay? So always remember that when you are trying to present something or get a point across, is that you want to get it visual as soon as possible, and you want it to tell a clear story where somebody understands what the heck they are looking at. With this, I don't even know what was on the y-axis here. Let's just hope it's not, I don't know, something bad. But maybe it's like, average order value or something from an e-commerce site. And you can easily see that at the beginning, we started at 10. And although it went up and down and spiked here and whatever, we can see that over time, it's going up. It's a good thing. Things are going well. And we understand this so much better than we would if we had seen all these numbers in a row and we were asked to try and make sense of it. Okay. So we infer by doing a sample, but we can also infer by looking at a visualization. We can't infer very well from numbers, and don't expect your audience to either. I guess that's my main point. All right. So we talked a little bit about this already, but let me just be a bit more formal so that we can have some terms in case I throw them around. What you have is this is a data table, and we have a list of metrics at the top, okay? And sometimes these are called scorecard metrics. Maybe I call them again, anyway, scorecard metrics. These are the main highlighted metrics of whatever it is you're analyzing. So we're going to be looking at web analytics. So you should sort of get familiar with some of these headline scorecard metrics here for web analytics, like users, the number of people who visited our site in a given period. New users, the number of people who visited our site who had never visited there before, and sessions, which is the number of visits. Now you see that new users is higher, users is higher than new users, meaning that some people came back twice, okay? So when they came back, they were counted as a user, but not as a new user. And then you see sessions is even higher than users, meaning that some people who had come to our site came back twice within the period, and they got counted twice as sessions. So they only got counted as one user, but they got counted as 2 sessions or more. And so those in your data tables that we're going to be looking at and we're going to be using hands-on, will give you the list of metrics. Now, these headline scorecard metrics, scorecard metrics, I'll call them, are very useful because they give you some indicator of your volume, yes, but you can't really do anything with them, okay? You can't do a lot with them. And the reason is that we don't really have any sort of vision of how to improve them, do we? Right? We see like, okay, we had 134,339 users. What can we do? So what we do is we do some analysis of the scorecard metric. And we do that by breaking it down by a category. Oops, sorry, that should be broken down by category left. Oh my God, that's terrible. I can't believe I did that. Let's change that. Change that now? Probably not. Nope. I'll change it to make sure that when these notes are uploaded, they have the right one. Okay, so broken down category on the left, and you have what are called the summary statistics as the entries. So users, we had 134,339. How are we going to improve that? I don't know. But we break it down by country, and we see 50,000 in America, 11,000 in India. Now, maybe you still don't exactly know how you're going to do it, but maybe what you could at least do is go, well, we could just keep what we're doing in America and still get the 50,000, and we could advertise in India. We boost up the Indian numbers, and then we would boost up the user numbers as a whole. Or we might say, you know what? America is our most important customer. Forget all these guys. Those guys will always be the same. Let's spend more time and effort on getting more American customers, and maybe it'll go further. And anyway, you can chop and change up your strategies of how you approach it. But this is why we do analytics, so that we can get a better view on the data and come up with some ideas, understand the past, come up with some ideas of what we can do in the future to improve the numbers. And that is what this is all about. So yeah, users, new users, and sessions. Good numbers, very interesting. However, they're normally not what the business is looking for, okay? They're good for us. We want to know how many users, how many new users, how many sessions. Very interesting for us, but that's not normally something that we report upwards. It's something that we sort of keep to ourselves and do our own analysis. Instead, what we need are response metrics. So those are just sort of normal metrics. I don't know what we call them, like, sort of, I think I call them later explanatory metrics. They're metrics that can explain something about our data, right, that we have, but they're not really what we're trying to get to happen. Instead, what we want to do is get response metrics. We want to move those. There's some things that we really want to move. And these are metrics that will indicate whether we have achieved a goal, whether we have done something that people want us to do. And here are ones all along that customer journey. Remember, customer journey was channel to website to conversion, okay? Very important for marketing. And some goals that people have, and this is, I don't know if you guys work with agencies at all, but these are things that are handed to agencies in order to achieve. And one of them, the first one, will be reach. Now, when you are advertising, every ad that is shown is an impression, okay? And impressions can be bought. So it's not really a goal. Like, give me 1 million impressions. It's kind of like, anyone can get 1 million impressions. Reach, however, is where you've not only gotten the ad in front of somebody, but it counts the number of people who have seen the ad in total. Okay. And it's a very important metric, because if you don't measure reach, you could end up showing the ad 1,000 times to one person and it would count as 1,000 impressions, but you've only reached one person. So one thing that you might want to work with an agency, especially if you're working on Facebook and Instagram, which does reach very well. I think LinkedIn, no, I think it's just Facebook and Instagram do it well. It actually measures not only how many times was the ad shown, but how many people saw the ad. Okay, so that could be a target for an agency that you might set. That'd be a response metric. That has to be something that is achieved. So I'm setting this. This needs to be shown to 1 million people. The other one's a bit more obvious: clicks. Right? You might want to make sure that not only your ads are being seen, but people are clicking on them. And clicks can be to either just open the ad on Facebook, which is a bit annoying that they measure that. No, thanks. I don't really need to know that. I want to know how many people click to our website. And that can be measured in 2 places. That can be measured on the social media platform, where it will count very accurately the number of clicks, or on Google. Google will very accurately measure how many people click on your ads, or you can measure it on your website by how many people visit. You might also measure, here's another one that some people use. It's called bounce rate. Another measurement for marketing analytics, where you say, okay, somebody saw the ad, they've clicked on it, they've come to our site, and they've done absolutely nothing. So they've bounced. They come, boing, and bounce off. And this is kind of a close look metric, maybe not something you'd report upwards, maybe a KPI, but a key performance indicator, something which says whether or not your marketing is working. But definitely something interesting for marketers, okay? Because marketers want to know, they want everything boiled down to one number so they understand it, right? That's statistical analysis. They want to analyze how many people are clicking on our ads and then coming to our site and then not doing anything. Because it means that either our ads are bad, our site is bad, some sort of combination of both, but whatever it is, if people are bouncing, we need to fix something, okay? So bounce is typically measured as a percentage of visitors. And what's the percentage here? So here we see from United States, again, we see it broken down. We can do something with this. United States, 33% bounce rate, 1 out of 3. And you go, that seems high, but actually, no, you ain't seen nothing yet, because India has a 58% bounce rate. So they are more than twice as likely when they come to your site to leave without doing anything. And strangely, United Kingdom about the same. And so you can go, well, why are the Americans staying longer? But some analysis on, maybe ask people, what is it? Why are you bouncing? I don't know. But anyway, we can look at this, at the data broken down, and try and figure things out and try and change performance for the future. So that's another good response metric for marketers, maybe not for KPIs. Conversions goes without saying. When people came to the site, did they do what you wanted them to do? Did they convert? If so, yes, ding. And we'll go through the conversion bit in Google Analytics. And then we look at that as a percentage of visitors. Okay. Question here: what would be the average bounce rate for a site? Is a tough question. So there's done some analysis. Someone did some analysis. I can't remember who. One of the big web analytics providers. And what they said is that it depends on your website. If you are a news site, your bounce rate is high, like 90%. If you are have some sort of customer service site, your bounce rate is going to be very low, like 20%. But normally 50, 60% is fine. Even up to 70, 80 is kind of normal. Just because a lot of people click by accident, or people come, and the other thing is they get everything they need in one page. So what the advice is if you feel like you're getting too many bounces, is to make your pages smaller, have more interactivity. So say, have videos, because if they come and watch a video, not a bounce. If they come and they have to click through a few screens, if they come to your site and they have to click on read more, not a bounce. Okay. So there's all sorts of things you can do, but yeah, it varies widely is the answer. All right, so great. So conversions, yes. So we want a conversion rate. We want to know how many people come to our site, actually do what we want them to do. Very, very important response metric. And then other ones, which are more for e-commerce, average order value. I mean, if you're not in e-commerce, maybe it doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's hugely important. One of the key metrics of e-commerce is how much do people order on average. And actually that's corrected by doing better merchandising. So you have somebody comes in and they reorganize the site and they put the most expensive products on top and have much better looking lists and good product shots and whatever, and you can raise the average order value. It's pretty cool. And then finally, return customers. How many people are coming back to get more, which is a really good metric to raise, because it means you're getting customers for nothing. Normally, internet businesses are measured by how much their CAC is, their customer acquisition cost, and their customer lifetime value. And so customer acquisition costs generally fixed, pretty hard to move. So if you can increase return visitors, you can increase your customer lifetime value and increase the value of your business. So there you go. This is something that if you're ever speaking to somebody in finance, talk about CAC and CLV, and then you'll get their attention. Talk about users and bounce rates and pages per session. You're going to lose them. I'm going to talk about real business metrics, and you will probably get a very willing audience. So customer acquisition costs and customer lifetime value, very important. All right, so those are the main sort of metrics that you would be using in, in web analytics. But finally, of course, this all boils down to this. You will be asked in any marketing department to hit some sort of KPIs. Now, one thing I will say, okay, first of all, registrations. Here we have a summary statistic of people who have registered on the site, right? Your KPI may not be monetarily oriented. It may be in, that you need to get people to the site and get them to become a member or sign up for an email list or request a call from sales. Especially in B2B world, a sale is not really the goal of a website. It's, the sale's way down the line. And so your KPI may be something simple as that, or if you're e-commerce, then it will be a purchase. But whatever it is, it indicates success. It's tracked over time. And dirty little secret, I don't know why, I tell people this all the time, and people sometimes are surprised or they argue with me. I'm like, most people only care about the KPI in the organization. No interest in all of the other response metrics and explanatory metrics and summary statistics. While we find them interesting, while we use them to improve our jobs, most people just want to know one thing, because they got everything else on their minds, right? They don't, maybe they might ask you for them, but really they'll be just looking at one thing. Are we converting more people? Are we getting more business? Is our marketing working? Is our website working? All will focus, and really you just need to boil it down to one metric, the key performance indicator. So yeah, here's registrations, but there'll be other ones as well. Like, as I say, you could do, some sort of request for sales or a purchase or whatever. It can be a key KPI. And so that's it. If you can focus on these things, it's pretty much your reporting work done. And it'll also help you drive your analytics projects. So you look at something like this conversion rate and you go, in any day, anyhow, you can look at your conversion rate as a site and go, look, we are converting 37 out of 10,000, 0.37%. But look at the differentiation. Americans are converting at a much higher rate. India and United Kingdom converting at a much lower rate. What's going on? Do we try to just get more Americans and Canadians? Or do we try and figure out, for some reason in India, for some reason they can't buy it in rupee or whatever, they can only buy it in US dollars. And so it's killing our business because we don't have the ability to take their money. And this is something, in some ways, only an analyst can really drive, especially if it's an online only business. Very, very hard for other people in the business to discover these things and, you know, and unearth them and figure out the solutions, whatever. But us, easy. Us, easy. We just look at the website, we look at the analytics, and we come up with ideas and maybe solutions. But it's all about understanding the past, what's happened, and then coming up with some sort of prediction for the future. All right, so just put everyone back on their toes. I know you're all waiting for this. What is quiz number 2? And we go back to MMAQ. So sorry for the person who got left behind last time. Let me just make absolutely clear. I put just click on this link in the chat. And if you haven't already, you just put in your email address. And don't worry, it's not a registration. It's just to remember you in case you need to change your device. And then it'll give you a silly name, and you just answer the questions. So don't try to answer them via the Zoom call. This is what the problem I've had before. Because I will switch over to my quiz so that you see that the quiz is going on, okay? But you can't answer them on here. You have to answer them on your own computer or handphone. Most of them, I think most of them are just multiple. Yeah, they're all multiple choice, and I think there's only 4 answers to each or whatever. So you should be able to do it pretty easily. Okay, so we were on question 5, and hold on, let me just check to make sure. I thought I only did 3 questions per section to avoid bogging us down. Hold on, let me just triple check this so I understand completely. Okay, so 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 2. Yeah, so I only did 3 questions. I don't know how I did this. Okay, and hopefully question 7 works. I haven't looked at it yet. Oh no. So if question 7 doesn't work, don't blame me. It's because this is kind of new software for me. So let me just go back to my quiz here. All right, so what I'm gonna do is, if I get back my thing here, there we go. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna switch the question to number 6, 7, and 8. And then we're gonna have 45 seconds each. Each question is 45, each question is 45 seconds, countdown timer, 50 points. So you lose about a point per second. And then we'll just do 3 questions just to kind of get you thinking about it again. But it's a good idea. We should share the notes so that you can see them in advance, but this will help you do it as well. Okay, so let's go here. And I'm going to switch to 6 in 3, in 2, and in 1, and let's go. Okay, that's ended up being really small, but maybe you still can see it. Right. Okay. What kind of variable is revenue? All right. And what was the answer on that one? Let's see. We have revenue is continuous. It is a continuous variable. It is a number, and it moves from 0 to maybe, hopefully, infinity. And so, yes, it is. So actually, let's just go through those very quickly, since maybe there's a little bit of misunderstanding. So the mean of this number series 1, 3, 6, 10. So the mean is just the count, sorry, the sum divided by the count. So 1 plus 3 is 4, plus 6 is 10, plus 10 is 20, divided by 4 is 5. That's it. And the reason that the mean is so important is because it gives you some idea of the middle value and some idea of what to expect in the future. Okay, very important statistic. Boils all 4 of those numbers down to one number, 5. And even though 5 isn't in that list, it is where the number series is centered on. And so in the future, you can expect when you add them up and divide by the count that you will get 5 again. It's the best information that you have, that's what it will be. Okay. My tiny little chart here, I'm going to have to figure out why it's so small. I put it in really big. Your boss says revenue is going up. Does the data support this view? And what you maybe can almost make out there is that it says date on the way on the bottom, and it says revenue way on the bottom, and then it says revenue way at the top there on the side. Sorry, date on the bottom, revenue on the side. It should have seemed a bit better. And you look at the graph, and if you were looking at it just on its own, you would have no idea whether revenue was going up or down. But now you put a trend line in there, and suddenly you have this amazing new insight, an amazing new ability to look at a very, very noisy set of data and go, okay, he says it's going up. Does the data support this view? Well, the data doesn't support it. And that's the best that we can say. We can't say, no, boss, it's going down. Because we really can't say that. We can't say that because it's not really our our ability stops at what the data says. Like, we don't want to say anything absolute. That's for the boss to say something absolute. We say, no, the data indicates the revenue is trending downwards. So the data doesn't support your view. And this is how analytics can give anyone in an organization a superpower, because you can actually contradict the boss if you dare. But you can. At least you have a leg to stand on. And then finally, maybe a slightly unfair question, because we talked about this a while back, is what kind of variable is revenue? Is it continuous, categorical, or ordinal? So ordinal, remember, was age range, where you could be younger, middle-aged, older. Categorical was like the name of states or the name of country or your name is a category. Everything like that is a category where there's no order. You can't average people's hair color, right? It's just a category. We can only count them. That's it. Whereas revenue, wow, we can do all sorts of things with revenue. We can average it, we can count it, we can sum it, we can add up, divide it, take differences, whatever we want to do. And it's because it is a continuous variable. It is continuous. Okay, so that's what. All right, well done, everybody. Let's have a look at not the live answer. We want to see the leaderboard. Ooh, and we see Fish Stargazer has pulled ahead to number 1, Lime Lifter at number 2, and we have a battle there going on for number 3 with Sunset Amigo and Flower Tamer. All right, it's still very alive. But anyway, don't worry about it. If you're not at the top, just try and maybe improve by 1 or whatever. Try a bit for faster on the draw, and see if you can move your way up. Okay, but it's a good way of just kind of sort of keeping your mind in the game, and we'll keep it up for the rest of the thing, and maybe at the end we'll see who wins. All right, let us get back to what we were doing, because we need to power on to let's see, how much longer have we got before we got a little bit to go before we get to our Google Analytics. All right, so maybe not before lunch. Maybe what I'll do is I'll finish up this content. We'll have a nice break, and then when we come back, we can then start with Google Analytics so that everyone feels very hands-on-y after lunch. Because I know it's the morning, maybe you're a little bit awake, but definitely in the evening or afternoon, it can be a bit slow. So let's go back here. All right, move on from there. So I'm going to go a little bit more detail on these response explanatory metrics because we now know what we're trying to achieve. We have things that we want to achieve. We want to get clicks, reach, clicks, conversions, these sorts of beautiful things. But we want to figure out how to improve them. And so sometimes we have to think about what causes what in order to improve our analytics. Okay. So we have response metrics, which are the things that we do to tell people about or to sort of our goals to hit, and maybe one or two of them are KPIs. But then we also have metrics which influence or explain those metrics. Okay, they're the ones that lead to it. And so I think I have examples coming up here, so I won't go into all details on these. But anyway, so there's a few examples, and I'll talk about them in a minute. And the reason why we look at explanatory variables and response variables separately is because explanatory variables are things that we can do something about. Okay? We can't necessarily drive conversions directly, but we can somehow figure out how to get more visits. And as our conversion rate tends to be pretty stable over time, if we get more visits, we should get more conversions, okay? Or if we don't get more conversions, then our conversion rate will go down and we'll go like, we've got bad visitors, okay? So it's a way of looking at the thing that we can change on the left, the explanatory metric, in order to influence the thing that we can't really change directly there on the right, okay? So let me go through with examples because it'll probably get a bit easier to understand. Okay, so first of all, impressions and reach. Now, a lot of times, especially if you are a luxury brand or alcoholic beverage, I guess is another one, or fashion, high fashion maybe, you don't really have a conversion point, right? If you're, I don't know, Louis Vuitton, and you're selling I'm guessing here, 10,000 ringgit handbag, you're not going to get a lot of ad click buys, right? It's just not going to happen. It doesn't happen. So what do you do? Or if you're B2B and say you're selling offshore drilling equipment, right? You're not going to get a lot of click buys, right? Ad click buys. It's just not going to happen. That's not the customer journey. So what do these marketers do? What can they measure? Well, what they can do is that they can go, right, we may not necessarily get conversions straight away, but what we can do is we can reach our target audience. We can do, I think I mentioned this later, but anyway, I'll tell you now, market orientation. And we can go, right, we have an audience. And for Louis Vuitton, we have an audience of people who are like millionaires or something, right? I don't know, or maybe not. No, maybe it's a wider audience. I'm not so familiar with the handbag market. But if you go, right, we have this group of people and we want to reach them. Now, we can't directly reach people. It's not really possible. We don't know. But what we can do is we can tell our agency, or we can try and figure it out ourselves, how to buy impressions. And we run ads. And the more ads we run, the more of our target audience we reach. Okay. So what we do is we focus our analytics on, we focus our efforts on impressions. We focus our analytics on reach. Okay. Oops. The more we buy, the more people we reach. That should be the other one. The more we reach, the more people buy. Sorry, somehow that got screwed up. Let me fix that. So I send you the notes. The more we reach, there we go, much better. So Marianne, I'm gonna have to send updated notes. All right, so we have visits and conversions. So conversions, we don't really, we can't, or it's hard. so that you can do some sort of work to improve your conversion rate, but it's pretty hard. And the reason why conversion rate is rock solid is usually a conversion is a combination of many, many things all come together. It can be that people got paid that day. It can be that people like to buy on Fridays, not on Thursdays. It can be that people like to buy at certain times of the month or certain times of the year, near Christmas. It can be that people, I don't know, only buy, tend to buy stuff when it's only 1 month old, right? So not too young, not too soon, not too late. This is something fashion brands know that, they don't buy stuff when it first comes out, and they don't buy stuff when it's sort of 3 months old. There's sort of a key period. And all of these things come together and converge. All these different factors come together and they converge into a moment when somebody buys something, and that determines a conversion. And because of that, it's really, really hard to do because there's so many things to influence. You can influence one or two of those things, but it's really, it's tough. It's tough. And also your your merchandising on your site, or how easy the checkout process is. All of these things are ways in which you can try to improve conversion rate, but it's very, very hard to do. But what you can do, because you have a rock solid conversion rate, usually if you're a good enough brand, is that you can increase the number of visits to your website. So you can advertise more. You can work on your ad creative to make sure that people click, that you can do a special offer in your ad, all these things to do to drive more visits. And then with a solid conversion rate, you will get more conversion. So there we go. Somebody's corrected my thing. The more media buy you do, the more reach you can get. Oh, yes, you're right. You're right. The more media, the more we buy, the more media we buy. Thank you. There we go. Excellent. Thank you for correcting my English. Obviously, I did that rather hurriedly. Because this is a slightly complicated concept. And so I put these, normally in class, I would do these on a whiteboard. But I don't have a whiteboard. Actually, maybe I should get one. That'd be good. But anyway, this is my only way to do it, is to sort of do this. So I typed these up last night. Okay, so the more people we get to the site, the more likely it is we will get conversions. Okay. And so if you want to increase your conversions, get more visitors to your site. So you could still measure your conversions, but you put your efforts into getting visits. And then finally, like email opens and getting return customers. Another thing, if anyone's done email marketing, obviously most of your email list are people who have bought from you before, or at least expressed a lot of interest in buying from you. And if you can get people to click on an email, you tend to increase the number of return customers. And so again, you don't focus, you may measure on the right, you may have that as a KPI, return customers, but you need to find the explanatory variable, the explanatory metric to work on. And one of them is to increase your email opens. And so what you might do is, your return customers might be your KPI, and that's what you really want to achieve. But you can sit there all day and watch that and have no idea how to move it. However, if you go, well, I know what we can do. We can test a whole bunch of different emails, and we watch the email opens very closely. Then one should increase the other. Okay, those things will be related to each other. So it's really important to get some idea of the metric, the measurement that you want to increase, your conversions, your reach, your return customers. That is very, very, very hard to influence, very hard to increase. And you monitor that, but you don't use that as your own way of measuring your own personal performance. Instead, or your team's performance, if you're a manager or an analyst. Instead, what you do is you find the thing that they actually have a chance of influencing and measure that and use that as your performance. As your performance metric, and that's what you give people feedback on. So there's no point going to a junior marketer and telling them, oh, well, you've not increased the return customer. It's very, very difficult for them to work on that. But what you can do is you can say, hey, your email opens look like they're going down. Please do some work on your email subject lines and try to get more people to open your emails. And then hopefully you should see your return customers go up. And this is where, sort of ad hoc analytics, just understanding how these things work together, and then doing measurements on both sides, can help you, do analytics to improve business. So yeah, a lot of times I hear about, people wanting to be more data driven, and I don't really think that they think about what they actually need to do. Because, a lot of times what they mean by data driven marketing is that they have the scorecard metrics, the conversion rate, the average order value, the return customer rate, the reach, up on, I've seen it literally on the side of a wall at a very large telecoms company, giant, sort of giant display showing these various metrics, but absolutely no, indication underneath whether or not the explanatory variables were moving or improving or whatever. And so I'm not really sure that's a reporting, yes, for sure, but I'm not really sure it's analytics, because you haven't done taken the time to analyze what is driving those scorecard metrics that are, yes, they're important to the business. Yes, they're KPIs, but it's not necessarily making, anything better by finding out what it is that drives those and trying to improve those instead. Yes, so data-driven marketing, influence the things that you can influence, the explanatory variables there at the top. So you can improve your response variables and your KPIs and measure and report the progress. And so you actually are driven by the data of the stuff you can change so that it improves the stuff that people care about. And that's truly data-driven marketing. All right. Okay, we're at 12:30. We're gonna go to 1, but let's see. Let me see how we do, because we may want to chop it off after quiz 3, and maybe whatever. You'll get an hour for lunch, regardless of what time we do it. But let me just go through this bit, because this is something I'm particularly passionate about, and I think this sort of would round up the morning rather well, to be honest. So using dimensions, I've alluded to this already. In that we have, scorecard metrics. Now, of course, I'm talking about web analytics here. And the reason why is because I really think that web analytics are the linchpin of marketing analytics now. I think that now, there's many other things that happen out in marketing, right? You have traditional media still, absolutely, which you can, buy and measure. You have your social media, whereas I indicated before, all of your analytics happens on Instagram or on Facebook or whatever, and and those are sort of separate. And maybe you also have, you still have in-store purchases. You have stuff that's offline, plenty of stuff that's offline, of course. However, a website is really a good indicator of how well a business is doing over time. And especially, I think if you make an effort to drive traffic to the website, it can really give you a barometer of how all the other stuff is. And so I tend to focus on web analytics, though there's no reason why this couldn't be. If you were more in traditional marketing and you had bricks and mortar stores, your scorecard metrics could be, some of your media impressions or your reach, and it could be footfall in the store, right? And you still have average order value. Or if you're, say, a B2B company, you could be measuring marketing qualified leads. And you could be talking about, how many people who've come through all your stuff that you've handed over to sales, and how many of those turned into converted. There's many different scorecard metrics you could use. I tend to use web. I think it's a good barometer, but this could be done any other way. And so here, I'll just go very quickly through these again to make sure that you understand what we're going to be talking about. So users, the number of people who visited your website. New users, the ones who haven't, let's do it over here, who have never visited before. Sessions are the number of visits, okay? The number of visits. Bounce rate is the percentage of people who came to your site and did nothing else. Pages per session. How many web pages on average people viewed on your site? Average session duration. How long people spent on your site. A bit of a controversial metric because it's kind of hard to measure this, but it's a good indicator. It's a good relative indicator between various things. We'll talk about average. So here we had average visits of 2 minutes and 45 seconds. E-commerce conversion rate. If you have e-commerce, how out of all the people who visited, what percentage bought something? Okay, and here we have 12 out of 10,000. That's how you'd read that. 0.12%, 12 out of 10,000. Transactions, number of people who bought something. Okay, we'll talk about difference between registering and buying a bit later on Google Analytics. And then hopefully it's something everyone understands, which is the revenue, the money that comes in, okay? So now you have all these scorecard metrics, very interesting, that you can use in order to analyze, you can use it to track what it is you're doing. But what I would say is that it's not particularly useful in and of itself. Let me just get this here. What you need to do is you need to take these continuous metrics, these numerical metrics that we will use and we'll do statistical analysis of, and you need to break them down by categories, okay? So you need to divide up your scorecard metrics by some category for more specific analysis. Now, what Google Analytics calls this is a dimension, That's the word that they use. Reasonable, category, dimension, okay? And so the dimension always sits on the left, and you have the scorecard metrics up at the top. And then you see, I think it's quite intuitive, but just in case you're wondering, this is each of the scorecard metrics divided up by the category. And this allows you to do, this is Google language here, actually right up there at the top is all Google language used for more specific analysis. It's true though, it's true. It's not a bad description, because then you're able to be more specific about what you're trying to find out. So in this case, and we will go through this report later, but I just wanted to show you as an example, we will look at how people got to your website. Did they come from organic search, meaning Google free search? Did they come direct? Did they just type your name into their mobile, or did they maybe use a QR code or something? Referral, were they referred from another site? Did they come from social media, et cetera, et cetera? We can go down this list here. But what's really important here is that we can, first of all, we can look at our kind of explanatory variables, our sessions. Are we getting enough sessions from these different channels? We can look at how the behavior, what did people do on the site? So I would say here we have, first of all, you have your counting metrics here, your acquisition, how many we got. Then we have their behavior. What did they do when they were on the site? Did they leave straight away? If so, maybe we need to do some work on that channel. So for example, organic search bounces at 53%, 0.43%, we're just following here. And then we have social media is at 58.20%. Wow, those seem high, because when we get a referral from somebody else's website, they're only bouncing at 32%. And so we might go, okay, maybe these people who are coming, for example, from social media are having a bad experience. And this is the ad hoc analytics we should be doing all the time. Pages per session could be an indication of interest, that people who are from referral are 6.06 pages per session, whatever, and maybe they're more interested, and maybe the people we get from referral are better. Or alternatively, it could be a measure of how quickly they can get things done. So maybe if we have a lot of pages per session and we're a very small site, that people are frustrated and clicking all over the place and not actually being able to accomplish things. Then, of course, the easy one to here is the e-commerce conversion rate transactions, where we look at it, break it down by channels, and we can see, we're getting almost all of our business from organic search and direct. And so maybe we need to work on our other channels to see if we can drive more traffic there, because it's kind of hard to drive more organic search. I don't know, maybe you can do a bit more SEO or something. But anyway, we won't worry about the details of how we do it. We just need to worry about measuring it, and we find the right people to do the work. Okay, so if you use dimensions, you can understand the past better, what's happened in the past, and you can predict the future. You can say, look, we see an average of 4.17 pages per session. If we don't do anything, It will remain that way. I would say you probably could say about the e-commerce conversion rate. We are converting at 12 per 10,000. It seems a bit low. And if we don't make a change, then we should expect that again. But if we look down here on this chart, look down at paid search number 7, look across the e-commerce conversion rate, and you see that it is 0.30%. Wow, our paid search is converting at almost 3 times the rate of our site average. Why is that going so well? What is it about our paid search traffic that is converting people at 3 times the normal rate that we can perhaps use on our other channels, like social, which is converting at a miserable 5 per 10,000? Okay? So this is how it's done. This is why we do analytics, how it's done, how you can do formal analytics, absolutely. And you can do the A/B testing and the sort of the segment analysis and all this stuff where you kind of sort of step away from and use the data, but you can also just crack open Google Analytics or whatever analytics, maybe if you're using, the social media channels, maybe if you're those social media channel analytics, divide up the data into dimensions or categories, see who is outperforming each other and go, why is this the case? And maybe get the underperforming one up. Okay. That is the whole purpose of marketing analytics. So how can we divide up our data? Well, there's many different ways. Here's a few ways, just examples. Reach. We can divide up our reach by the campaign. So maybe we have a campaign that's a brand-focused campaign that is all about our brand and talks about our brand, and we reach this many people. But we have a 50% off campaign, and it's reaching a heck of a lot more. Why would that be? Well, we I don't know, talk to our agency, or maybe we figure out from Facebook and we see, the 50% one is being shared by people. So it's reaching more people because people are sharing it. Our branding one is boring and it's shared by nobody. So I predict in the future, if we keep giving 50% discounts, we will probably do very well. If we keep just showing a boring brand video, we will keep doing very poorly. And then you can make a change. Maybe you can go, well, maybe we need to, what we'll do is we'll double our prices and then offer a 50% discount and get people very excited. No, something, but you can do something when you look at the data and analyze it. Clicks. How many people are clicking on your ad? One great analysis on this is to look at the days, because when you look at how your marketing performs, it can perform very differently depending on what day of the week it is. And I think probably most of us understand the weekend audience can be very different from the weekday audience, of course. But I would say there's even more granularity there, where you look at the weekdays. And we find that actually Wednesdays tend to outperform all the other days of the week, with Fridays kind of being the lowest weekday and Monday being sort of second lowest. And you can sort of do this analysis and find out, what days are performing best. And maybe then you don't run any promotions on Wednesdays in order to maximize your revenue, and you run heavy promotions on Fridays and Mondays, because you still have customers, still are willing. It's not like on Saturdays and Sundays, a bit hard to do business, I think, sometimes, because people used to be doing a lot on the weekends. But Fridays and Mondays, maybe people are at their desks. They just need a bit more goading in order to do what you want them to do. Okay, that's done by analytics. No one else has that information. No one else looks for this information. If you're not doing it, it's unlikely anyone else is. Visits. You can take all your visits and divide them up by landing page. We'll do that. We'll show up, look at a report that tells us what page people landed on. Then when you've divided up by landing page, you can go, well, how did people behave when they came on that landing page? Did people buy more? Did they stay longer? Did they view more pages? Did they bounce higher, right? So some landing pages have a high bounce rate. Stinks. Terrible landing page. Get rid of it. Only an analyst can do this. Only an analyst can find that, because they've gone, right, I want to look at all of our visitors. I want to see it by landing page. I want to see the behavior. And you see when people land on About Us, they leave. Okay. And so get rid of that or change the about us page and make it about them, instead. Conversions divided by channel. We just looked at that before. We could look at all the different channels, how well they converted, and say, why is paid search converting at 3 times the site average, and try and fix that. And then AOV, average order value, is, as I say, influenced a lot by merchandising. And so if you have any sort of e-commerce, what your product category page is can have a lot of influence. What your product, the PDP, the product display page, can have a lot of influence. How good things look online can have a lot of influence on whether people buy them or not. And so when you have a better looking website, you can increase the average order value. Believe it or not, it is true. And then what you need to do is take all of the data that you're going to do and build some sort of data model. And really what a data model is going to be like sort of your little portfolio of what you're going to care about, what you're going to, how you're going to divide up your data, how you're going to look at it. Because the thing is, you could otherwise get lost in analysis paralysis and just look at everything by every dimension. Look at all of your conversions by all these different things, like what campaign it came from, what channel it came from, what device it was on. And what you have to do is you have to limit it. You have to limit it to go, right, I saw some big differences in how one campaign was performing than another. Right, I put that in sort of my model of how our business works. I'm going to always look at visits on the basis of campaign. I've noticed that landing page really affects conversion rate. I'm going to keep a close eye on that. And you have to minimize the amount of data that you're going to analyze in order to be productive. Okay. And I don't need to go. I don't think I need to go into all that. But anyway, your metrics, which is the scorecard numbers, your dimensions, how you're going to divide that up, filter it. Okay, so you may not actually be looking at everything. You may actually only be an analyst for Malaysia, for example, or you may only want to analyze, I don't know, iPhone users or something. You may have some filter on it which sort of says, right, I'm gonna look at channels conversions per channel, but I'm only going to look at it for a particular country. That would be one way of doing it. And then orders, you may want to also limit it. I'm only going to look at data where people actually bought something. Could be another way of limiting your data. So yeah, so you may just say, right, ads, I'm going to measure the impressions, the reach, and the clicks, and you might do that by campaign. Website, you might look at, just a few metrics by channel, and then e-commerce by, say, landing page or category page. And that would just be it. That'd be it. There is a finite limit. There is an infinite amount of things that you can do. And you will see once we've had our lunch and we get into Google Analytics, you can analyze the data in a million ways just with a few clicks, no problem. However, if you're going to be a productive analyst, you should look for a few things that you see there's big differences, try to correct them, okay? And then make that your work. Make that your work. Make that your data model, and then that your work. And I think, what I've heard from CMOs, and also interesting from a VC as well, was about, a company that really understands the customer journey and has found a few key metrics to analyze at each step along the way and works diligently and trying to improve those key metrics. Those are the people who are actually doing marketing correct. It's the people who try to do everything and try to look at everything and have very, big, giant dashboards and spreadsheets, tend to underperform, tend to struggle to adapt to changing markets, and tend to struggle to use marketing effectively to drive more business. So I think there is something to this, that limiting what you are trying to analyze is actually going to make you more productive. And so, you just come up with consistent, regular reporting on what it is you're going to do. You look very carefully at what you've decided are your explanatory variables, which is the stuff that you influence, versus your response. Track it over time and make sure that you have some sort of KPI, some sort of key performance indicator, which tells you whether or not your marketing is reaching its goal. So whether that be reach, if you are one of those kind of brands. If it's e-commerce, it's conversions, business to business, whether it's registrations or signups for things. Um, these are the sorts of things that, you always has to be within your data model. Yep. And you sort of build the case for, what are the different levers out there that drive these things? What can you do? What can you do or your team do in order to improve them? Okay. And I think that ultimately is what you're trying to achieve by doing digital marketing analytics. All right. So on that note, I just want to do one more little sort of check your knowledge quiz. And then I believe what we will do is we will break for lunch. We'll break for lunch. And then, because we've already gone, we started what, at 11? And it's 12:46. So we're gone far enough. All right. So let me launch this one here. So let me go back into my quiz paper here. And I am just going to check, make sure, what did I have here? So 3, 3, 3. All right. I only had 3. And a couple of them are a bit of stretch questions. So don't worry about them too much. But anyway. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click it over. And then we'll have 45 seconds, 50 points, decreasing points timer to answer the questions. Okay. So get ready. In 3, in 2, in 1, and let's go. 3 questions. Let's go. All right, final answers and final answers. And what does that session's metric measure? All right. Ooh, close there, but I think we might have pulled it. All right, let's go back through these very quickly. Just review the topics before we take a break. Which one of these could be an explanatory variable for conversion? So typically an explanatory variable is something that you have some influence over, and that will hopefully lead to the next variable. So you don't want to be too many steps away. So what I would say is that you should, if you are having trouble getting high conversions, you might want to try and look at your ads or your SEO or your emails and try to get more clicks. Get more clicks. Okay. And then that would lead, hopefully, to more conversions if your conversion rate is solid. Left-hand side of a data table. Okay, so yeah, I kind of messed this one up there because I did mention that it was a category because it's not called a category though. The left-hand side of the data table is called a dimension. It's called a dimension. So I was a little bit misleading on that one, so sorry about that. But dimension is the right answer. That is what Google Analytics calls it, and I think it's probably a good enough name for it. Good enough name. All right, last one here. What is the sessions metric measure? What does sound like a time measurement, right? The session was how many times, but actually, and this is a Google Analytics term, it is the number of visits. It's the number of visits your website had. All right. Anyway, this is all for fun. It's all anonymous. Don't worry. No one will know. But let's just see how we're all doing. How is the leaderboard running? Oh, Fish Stargazer is pulling ahead with Sunset Amigo at number 2, and a very close number 3, Flower Tamer 3. So we do have a little bit of a battle going on there at 2 and 3, but well done, FSG there. Well done. All right, it is 12:51, and our next portion of the day will be to do Google Analytics, and that we need to start fresh. We need to start fresh. So why don't we take a break now?